She just wanted to buy milk for her baby. But with only a few coins in her hand, she had no choice but to put the diapers back. That's when a voice behind her said, "Leave it. I've got this." She had no idea that man was a billionaire, and that his gesture would change everything. If emotional stories about resilience and new beginnings speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button and come feel this journey with us. The checkout line crawled forward painfully slow, almost like time itself was in on Chloe's struggle, squeezing her just a little tighter. With Jack asleep in her arms, his tiny body warm against her weary chest, she balanced the last of her coins in trembling fingers. The formula and a pack of generic diapers sat in the little blue basket, shaking slightly as if ready to slip away along with the last of her dignity. The cashier's look was impatient. The clinking of the coins echoed louder than it should have. Chloe took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be enough. She'd have to put something back. Tears stung her eyes as she looked down at Jack. His rosy cheeks puffed, still sucking his thumb in his sleep. He wouldn't understand what it meant to go without milk, but his little body would. With a heavy heart, Chloe reached for the pack of diapers. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered under her breath. Every decision felt like swallowing a scream. Behind her, a kid whined about candy bars. The contrast was cruel. The cashier's glance was automatic, almost indifferent. But further back in the line, someone was watching silently. Sharp eyes, calculating and cold, used to seven-figure spreadsheets, gala dinners, and choices that shook entire companies. Ryan Morgan stood there, coffee in hand, looking completely out of place in that run-down corner store. And yet something about that woman, that moment, cracked open a long-buried part of him. He stood still, barely breathing. Chloe tried to keep her smile from breaking. "Just the formula, then," she said, voice cracking as she pushed the rest aside. She didn't bother looking back. What for? She knew the weight of stares. She'd rather face quiet shame than loud pity. But just as the cashier moved to scan, a folded bill slid onto the counter. "Leave it all. I'm paying," a calm, steady voice said. Chloe turned, confused. A well-dressed man stood there, gentle expression and a smile that reached his eyes. She stumbled over her words. "Sir, you don't have to. She tried to say no, but he simply raised his hand kindly. "I know, but I want to." She swallowed her protest and her tears. His help came with something rare, respect. This wasn't charity. It was a gesture that warmed more than her threadbare coat, a gesture that whispered, "I see you." For a brief moment, she felt human again. Ryan, on the other hand, felt something unusual. The silence inside him started to break. There was something about her, how she held her baby, the look in her eyes like she'd cried too many times but still tried to smile. Old memories stirred, ones he'd tried hard to forget. But he didn't look away. He paid the bill, helped her with the bag, and walked with her to the sidewalk. A simple act, with the power to shift destinies. As the cold wind brushed their faces, Chloe thanked him again, unsure of what to say. "I don't even know how to thank you." Ryan gave a faint smile. "Just take care of him. That's more than enough." She had no idea that what seemed like a tiny moment would begin a transformation that would change not just her life, but his too. Right there, on a frozen sidewalk outside a modest store, two worlds collided. One of power, one of sacrifice, one of deadlines, one of surrender. She, holding her baby with tired eyes. He, holding years of decisions and a sleeping heart. But fate doesn't ask permission. And in that instant, something took root. Chloe walked away with groceries in hand and tears in her eyes. Ryan stayed there a moment longer, watching her disappear into the street. Something deep inside told him this wasn't a goodbye. It was the beginning. Neither of them knew just how much that moment would change everything. Forever. At just 23, Chloe already knew what it meant to skip meals so her son could eat. Every sleepless night, rocking Jack in her arms was a silent battle with math. How long would the formula last? 2 more days? The power bill had already come with a shut-off warning. But the worst part wasn't hunger or exhaustion. It was the crushing loneliness. Ever since Jack's father vanished, no note, no goodbye. Everything had fallen on her shoulders. including the guilt she didn't deserve. The tiny apartment they lived in barely fit the crib, and the overdue rent followed her like a shadow. Her waitress job at a downtown cafe barely covered anything. Tips depended on customers' moods and how well she could hide the exhaustion in her eyes. And when Jack got sick, which was often thanks to the cold and poor nutrition, Chloe missed work. And missed work meant missed money. Some days she cried in the bathroom, door locked, scared Jack would hear. She cried over expensive formula, over the biting winter, over having no one to call. She watched old friends post pictures of vacations, dinners, parties. And her? She couldn't even remember the last time she looked in a mirror without rushing. She didn't feel pretty. She felt broken, exhausted. But she kept standing, for someone too small to understand, but who looked at her like she was the whole world. Her mind was a constant battlefield. Guilt gnawed at her. Guilt for not giving more, for not finishing school, for trusting someone who vanished the second things got hard. Still, she carried on. Every day she got up, made the bottle, changed the diapers, dressed Jack with the gentle care only a desperate mother could muster. And she fought, quietly bleeding inside. It was survival, but it was love too. When Jack smiled at her, it felt worth it. Even if just for a moment. Then the rent would hit her again. The anxiety would choke her. She felt like a ticking bomb. What if she got sick? What if she couldn't keep going? Who would care for Jack if she fell apart? That question haunted her like a ghost. The nights were long, cold, lonely. Deep down, she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold on. Asking for help terrified her, maybe out of pride, maybe out of shame. She'd heard enough cruel advice to last a lifetime. You made your bed. Should have thought it through. Not my problem. So she stayed quiet, kept it all inside. But inside, she was screaming for a miracle. For just one shot. Even Jack, barely a toddler, seemed to feel it all. Some days he cried more than usual. Chloe thought it was colic, but maybe it was connection. Mothers and babies share a bond science still can't explain. In those silent moments, touches, glances, she found breath, but also fear. The fear of failing. The fear that one day, he'd look at her and feel resentment for the life she couldn't give. Behind every decision, every sacrifice, every missing grocery item, was the ache of never feeling enough. She wanted more. She wanted to study again, to build a real future, to give Jack a home that didn't come with fear. But how do you do that when there's no time, no money, no one? That question hurt the most. And she still didn't have an answer. Until that day in the store. The moment a stranger's hand brushed her fate. Chloe didn't know it yet. But what was coming would change more than her finances. It would shift the way she saw herself. And slowly, the cracks inside her would start to reveal something else. A strength she didn't even know she had. Before becoming a mom, Chloe dreamed of being a therapist. She was the kind of teen who'd sit in the school courtyard, listening to people vent like she was soaking up their pain. She had a rare kind of sensitivity, but also a deep fear of not being enough. Raised by a tired teacher and an absent father, she learned early not to expect too much from life. Still, she dreamed. Big. Dating Tyler felt like hope at first. She was 19, working in a stationery shop, prepping for college entrance exams. He was charming, good-looking, talked about wanting a family. When she found out she was pregnant, the ground disappeared from beneath her. But she stayed. For herself. For the tiny life growing inside her. Tyler. He lasted less than 2 months after the test. Said he needed time to think. He never came back. Chloe didn't tell her mom right away, afraid of disappointment, of that heavy stare. And when she finally did, the support was lukewarm. You're on your own. And she was. She quit school, worked double shifts, bought secondhand clothes, asked for help in donation groups, made baby food out of whatever she could find. Every tiny act of care was a declaration, I will love, even if abandoned. After Jack was born, Chloe lost herself for a while. The postpartum hit like a storm. Crying, exhaustion, fear. Some days she didn't want to get out of bed. But when she saw that gummy, drooly smile, she remembered she had to keep going. He needed her. And that truth, it was heavy. But it anchored her too. Jack was all she had. And somehow, that gave her strength. Motherhood didn't kill Chloe's dreams. It just put them to sleep. Sometimes, walking past a university building, she'd picture herself there, book in hand. But it was fleeting. Survival came first. And she was really good at it. She became a master at budgeting, memorized sales, handled everything alone. Her body ached. Her mind begged for rest. But her heart? Her heart kept beating, with a love strong enough to move invisible mountains. Physically, Chloe barely recognized herself anymore. Deep eye bags, hair always up in a messy bun, clothes faded from endless washes. But there was a beauty in her, raw and resilient, something in those tired green eyes, a quiet kind of strength, not the kind you see on magazine covers, the kind you live through. She was the type to apologize for taking up space, kept her voice down, never wanted to be a burden. But when she did speak to someone, she was kind, even when she was breaking inside. She'd learned to be invisible to avoid disappointment, to stop hoping for help so she wouldn't be crushed when it didn't come. And that made her even more human, more worthy, stronger than even she could see. Chloe didn't have luxury, but she had dignity, and it showed in the little things, the way she folded Jack's clothes, kept up with his shots, made sure daycare was never late, even if it meant skipping her own meals. She carried scars no one saw, but they made her solid on the inside. Her vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the foundation of a deep, powerful courage, shaped by pain. And without even realizing it, Chloe was the kind of woman who inspired, not with motivational speeches, but just by surviving, by turning barely enough into love. She just needed someone who noticed, someone who could look past the mess and see the greatness hiding in the chaos. That same week at the supermarket, Chloe almost lost her job. Jack had woken up with a fever, his little face flushed, eyes glassy. There was no one to stay with him. The public daycare she'd fought so hard to get into required a doctor's note anytime a child showed symptoms, but the nearest clinic charged more for a visit than she had in her wallet. It was a cruel choice. Leave her sick baby alone or miss work and risk losing her only source of income. She chose to stay. She sat beside the crib all day, changing cold compresses, checking his forehead with the back of her hand. Every sharp cry tightened her chest. Every passing minute felt like fear spreading through her, like ink in water. The phone buzzed with a cold message from her supervisor. "We'll need to talk when you come back." Chloe knew exactly what that meant, and she didn't have the strength to beg again. Her days had become a brutal cycle. Work, fear, Jack, bills. And in the middle of it all, there was the broken washing machine, the gas that was about to run out, and the neighbor pounding on the wall every time Jack cried at night. It was like life made a point of reminding her things could get worse. Still, she didn't give in. She carried grocery bags with Jack in her arms, walked through rain without an umbrella, walked miles just to save on bus fare. One morning, rushing to work, Chloe slipped on the wet sidewalk. She hit the ground hard, scraping her knee, her palm burning from the fall. She got up fast, ignoring the pain, afraid of being judged, or worse, of scaring Jack. He didn't cry. He just looked at her wide-eyed like he was saying, "You got this, Mommy." So she kept going, blood dripping down her jeans. The hardest part? There was never a break. Chloe didn't even have time to breathe. Every nap was broken by feedings, fevers, or diapers. She couldn't remember the last time she took a hot shower without rushing. Everything was timed, adjusted, calculated. Her body stayed in survival mode. And it wasn't just physical exhaustion anymore. It was soul deep. Still, she smiled. At Jack, at cafe customers, at the building's doorman, a smile full of cracks. But it was all she had left. Sometimes, she imagined someone out there living a life like hers, and that stopped her from feeling completely alone. A fragile hope, but it was still alive, a thread of faith. The money she kept hidden in an envelope inside a drawer was her only plan of escape. Someday, she wanted to take a tech course, maybe go back to school, do something different. But emergencies always came first. A surprise bill, diapers, an urgent doctor visit, and the dream would go back to sleep. Again. Chloe also dealt with daily microaggressions, judgy stares on the bus, mean comments from coworkers, jokes about being a single mom, each wound too small to complain about. But together they left scars. And deep down, it all pushed her further into society's blind spot, a place where women like her are forgotten. But she refused to disappear. Every obstacle felt like a cruel reminder that life wasn't meant to be fair. Still, Chloe held on. Maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of love. Probably both. And in the middle of all that silent pain, she kept going. Because deep down, she still believed that something could change. That someone someday might see everything she was. That night, after putting Jack to sleep, Chloe sat on the kitchen floor with an old laptop a friend had loaned her. The screen flickered, slow, but it worked. She searched for free online courses, remote jobs, anything that could help her earn more without leaving Jack. Her eyes burned, but she kept going. She had to try. She couldn't wait for another miracle. She found a full scholarship for a 6-month administrative assistant course. There was even a chance of an internship at the end. Her eyes lit up, just for a second. It was a start, a new beginning. She filled out the form carefully, her hands shaking. And when she clicked submit, it felt like pressing a switch inside herself. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was trying to change. The next morning, she rushed to the cafe, heart racing. Asked to adjust her shifts to fit in the classes. Her supervisor frowned. "You sure about this? Most people give up," she said with a skeptical tone. Chloe nodded. "I'm not giving up." But she knew she'd have to prove it, with her body, her time, her life. Because for her, it was now or never. The following days were brutal. She woke before sunrise, dropped Jack off at daycare, ran to work, then straight to class. Slept barely at all, ate even less. Her body started breaking down, lower back pain, dark circles, dizzy from pure exhaustion. But Chloe masked it all with weak coffee and worn-out concealer. She couldn't stop now. Because this time, it wasn't just survival. It was momentum. The course was tough. She hadn't studied in years. She felt out of place among the fast-talking teens with shiny new phones. But Chloe scribbled notes in her nearly dried-out blue pen, soaking up every word like seeds she'd one day plant. At night, she'd review the material on the bedroom floor, Jack sleeping beside her. The sound of his breath was what kept her going. One Friday, she nearly quit. It was raining. The bus was late. She showed up late for work, got chewed out in front of everyone, and missed half her class. She sat at the train station crying into her hands. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, she thought. Then her phone buzzed. A photo from daycare. Jack, smiling, holding a paper flower. And that was enough. She stood up. She started seeing little wins, made friends in the course, shared notes, helped classmates. Her teacher began to notice. "You stay so calm under pressure," she said. "You ever thought about working in customer service or negotiation?" Chloe smiled, surprised. It was the first time in years someone saw something in her beyond the tiredness on her face. Still, the doubts were there. She was scared she wouldn't finish. Scared she wouldn't get hired. Scared that nothing would change in the end. That fear was always close. But so was something else. A small but stubborn voice that whispered, "Keep going." And she did. Even when afraid. Even in the dark. Because now she believed in at least one thing. What she was doing out of love. Deep down, through every misstep and fall, Chloe knew. With every effort, every hard choice, she was building something, still invisible, still quiet, but real. Like roots growing underground. Reaching for a light she couldn't yet see, but could feel. The internship at the company gave Chloe a breath of fresh air. But as always, life demanded more than she expected. In those first few weeks, she tried to balance the internship, caring for Jack, and studying with surgical precision. But her body started to push back, a cold that wouldn't go away, constant headaches, bone-deep fatigue. One day she collapsed in the company elevator. When she came to in the infirmary, she was surrounded by strange faces and could hear Jack crying somewhere nearby. Ryan showed up soon after, visibly shaken. "You need to slow down, Chloe. You're pushing past your limits." But all she could do was cry. "I can't stop, Ryan. If I stop, everything falls apart." She said it in a whisper, desperate eyes filled with fear. Ryan gently squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore." But she didn't know how to believe that just yet. That night at home, Chloe found an eviction notice waiting for her. Even with the new paycheck, rent was still behind. Bills piled up, choking her from every side. With Jack asleep beside her, she broke down in silence. A kind of crying that came from the deepest corner of her soul. For the first time, she thought about giving up, going back to her mother's house, dropping the course, quitting the internship, letting go of the idea of progress. But then she glanced at the course envelope. Just 2 modules left. She took a deep breath. She couldn't throw it all away now. So she wrote to Ryan. Not to ask for money, just for time. She explained everything. The exhaustion, the overload, the fear. She didn't expect a quick reply, but he responded that same day. Just a few words, but they hit her chest like a promise. "You're going to get through this, I'm with you." The next morning, Ryan went to HR himself and requested that Chloe be moved to part-time hours, with additional company support, including a salary advance. She resisted, tried to say no, but he was firm. "Take it, not as charity, but as an investment, because I believe you're going to soar." It wasn't pity, it was faith, and something inside her shifted. But the real turning point came a few days later. Jack had a bronchitis attack in the middle of the night. Chloe ran through the cold, cradling him, to the nearest public hospital. She spent the night standing in line, waiting to be seen. There, a rushed doctor muttered that if she had private insurance, treatment would be faster and safer. That broke her. She felt like a failure, unable to protect her own child. Back in the apartment, she sat on the living room floor with Jack in her lap and cried harder than she had in years. Everything poured out, the abandonment, the loneliness, the constant fear. It felt like life itself was screaming at her. "You can't do this." But something else emerged through the tears. Something fierce. Anger. Strength. "I never want to go through this again. Never." She said it with clenched fists and a broken heart. The following week, she went to Ryan with fire in her eyes. "I want to grow. I want to learn everything I can. Just give me the chance to show you I'm more than this." Ryan smiled. "That's exactly what I've been waiting to hear." That day, no spotlight, no applause. Chloe was reborn. Pain became fuel, fear became drive, and her love for Jack, her compass. It was the beginning of her strongest version, not because life got easier, but because she chose not to break. From that moment on, Chloe was different. She started arriving early to work, even as a part-time employee. She watched everything, took notes, asked questions without fear. She felt ashamed sometimes, of course, but she swallowed her pride like bitter medicine, knowing it was healing something bigger. She was determined, and that, in itself, set her apart. Ryan watched quietly. He noticed how she turned simple questions into deep learning, how she handled conflict with empathy, how she organized reports with care, how she brought fresh ideas to the table. "She's so much more than she looks like on paper," he said during a leadership meeting. That single sentence opened a quiet door. Chloe started getting invited to internal projects. At night, after Jack was asleep, she dove into study. She looked up business terms, read about contracts, CRM systems, workflow tools. Everything was new, intimidating, but thrilling. She felt like she was finally touching something real, a future, a place where she could be respected not for what she lacked, but for what she was. Her effort didn't go unnoticed. She was invited to help close a major client deal, a contract worth millions. Chloe reviewed documents, flagged clauses, suggested changes. What was supposed to be a simple admin task turned into something much bigger. Her sharp eye caught a major oversight. When Ryan heard, he paused, then said, "If this deal closes, it's because of her." And it did. The company celebrated, the CEO toasted, and Chloe cried, alone in the bathroom, face in her hands. Not because of recognition, but because of everything she had to survive just to get there. Every item she had to put back on a shelf, every silent tear, every night she went to bed hungry. It all made sense now. It led to this. She was on the right path. As a result, she was promoted. Now part of the customer relations team, earning more, with full health benefits. She could finally rent a better apartment for her and Jack, one with sunlight, a decent kitchen, a real room just for him. When they visited the place, she held him in her arms and said, "This is our new beginning." The months that followed were unlike anything Chloe had ever known. The company launched an internal training program specifically for single mothers, inspired by her journey. And Chloe, she was asked to lead it. She now had her own office, a small team, and the quiet respect of every department. But the greatest recognition came in the way people looked at her. No one saw her as the hard-working intern anymore. She was now a role model. The change in Chloe was undeniable. She walked taller, chin up, shoulders back. Her hair, once always thrown into a rushed bun, now flowed freely. And her eyes, once pleading for silence, now told stories. She had found her voice again, and she used it to lift up other women, one by one, as if saying, "If I made it, so can you." With her new salary, she enrolled Jack in a bilingual daycare. She bought a small but bright apartment, with a plant-filled balcony and a dinosaur-themed bedroom just for him. He loved dinosaurs. "This is our nest, baby," she said on moving day, eyes full of tears. A real home, built brick by brick with sacrifice, grit, and hope. She also signed them both up for a private health plan. No more nights in overcrowded hospitals. No more choosing between rent and medicine. For the first time, Chloe slept peacefully. She no longer had to fight just to survive. Now, she could live, and that was something both new and precious. Her relationship with Ryan was growing quietly, beautifully, without rush. He respected her. He listened. He laughed at Jack's stories and made a point of showing up, not as a savior, but as a man who had found a mirror in her strength. Ryan had changed too. No longer the distant CEO who lived by numbers alone. Now he saw names, stories, lives, and much of that shift was because of her. Over a simple dinner, he held her hand a little longer than usual. "You've changed everything in here, Chloe," he said, placing her hand over his heart. "Everything inside me." She smiled, not breaking eye contact. "And you changed what I believed about the world." It was the kind of love that grows slowly, without noise. In the cracks left by silence and pain, Chloe began receiving invitations to speak at events on inclusion, motherhood, and the modern workforce. At one of them, she walked on stage with Jack in her arms. She told her story with steady words, no sugarcoating, no romanticizing the struggle. She said no one should have to be a hero, but every woman deserves a network, a door open, a beginning. After the talk, she received dozens of messages from other women. Some said, "I saw myself in you." Others, "You gave me courage." And in that moment, Chloe realized her transformation wasn't just personal. It was collective. She had broken the cycle. And now, she was part of the miracle for others too. The most beautiful part? It all started with a simple gesture. A man at a grocery store choosing to pay for diapers and milk. A moment that, at first glance, seemed small, but over time revealed itself as a doorway, a turning point, the beginning of a beginning, where dignity, self-love, and hope bloomed again. It wasn't until she sat on the balcony of her new apartment, Jack asleep in her arms, the soft hum of the city in the distance, that Chloe truly realized she had made it. Not in the fairy tale sense, but in the real, deep sense. She had survived abandonment, loneliness, judgment, but more importantly, she had built, with her own hands, her own steps, and no one could take that from her. The girl who once counted coins at the checkout was now signing contracts, speaking to crowds, inspiring women. The mother who once blamed herself for not having enough now offered her child a home, a future, a story. And the baby who now slept peacefully in her arms, he was proof of everything she had faced, and transformed. Ryan, too, had been transformed. The coldness of data and balance sheets no longer fulfilled him. It was Chloe who gave his life purpose again. She hadn't just entered his world, she'd redesigned it. And in the quiet of that balcony, he reached for her hand and said, "I don't know what the future holds, but I hope I'm in it. With you two." She smiled, eyes misty. "You're already part of our present, and that's everything to me." It was her way of saying you're welcome here, not because you saved me, but because you walked beside me. And so, two lives that had once seemed worlds apart, shaped by different wounds, different paths, learned what real love truly is. It grows from presence, from listening, from respect. Chloe's story didn't end with a wedding or a fairy tale. It ended with something far more powerful: autonomy, peace, self-worth. She no longer needed to be rescued. Now she rescued herself, her child, and others around her who needed a light. Her past still existed, but it no longer defined her. It was simply the beginning of the story she rewrote, with courage. And if you think small gestures don't matter, think again. All Ryan did was slide a bill across a counter. Say, "I've got this." See someone. And it changed everything. You can be that person too. Sometimes all someone needs is to be seen, to be recognized, to have someone reach out, expecting nothing in return. Have you ever helped someone, or been helped, at a moment when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs hope. Turn on notifications for more stories like this one. I'll see you in the next chapter, where a wrong number, a quiet choice, or a stranger's kindness can change everything. Until then, take care of yourself and take care of each other.